if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Today, the big question is this: has the political class ever been more out of touch? And are they too obsessed with minority interests? At PMQs today, the main political event of the week saw the two main parties squabble over who is the most racist. Happy Ramadan, and talking yet again about ceasefires in Gaza. When will they stop ignoring the majority and tackle the real issues facing this great country? Of course, this comes as Lee Anderson, during his defection to Reform, said that he wanted his country back. We'll be asking throughout the show, do you feel proud to be British? If not, why not? And do you blame the political class? Lee Anderson will be joining us later in the show to pick up on that feisty debate. And you're not going to believe this last one. Failed asylum seekers are to be offered thousands of pounds to encourage them to move to Rwanda under a new voluntary scheme being drawn up by ministers as they look to build on a successful deportation score so far of absolutely zero. That's all coming up in your next hour. Thank you for joining me on the show. It's always an absolute pleasure and a joy to have your company. Two big questions I've already thrown out there on social media. We've had thousands of responses. The show hasn't even started. First one, has the political class ever been more out of touch with ordinary Brits than they are right now? If you thought Brexit was bad, what about this lot? Obsessed with racism, Gaza, Ramadan, Muslim war memorials, tone deaf to immigration, tone deaf to the needs of the majority of average Brits. Let me know if you think they're completely unfit for purpose. And following on from that, as Lee Anderson said, I want my country back. Do you feel that you're made to feel ashamed for being British now? Do you feel that our country has changed forever? And do you feel that you're made to feel like you're racist for even saying that? Get in touch. I'll read out the best comments throughout the show. gbviews@gbnews.com, of course, is the email address. But first, let's get stuck into your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much. I'm Sam Francis from the GB newsroom. Just after 3 o'clock, your top story this hour. Diane Abbott has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy. That's after she wasn't called to speak today. It's after Tory donor Frank Hester allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and said that she should be shot. Sir Keir Starmer confronted the Prime Minister over those remarks today, pressing Rishi Sunak to return the £10 million donation that Hester made. In today's Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader asked whether Rishi Sunak was proud to be supported by someone who made, he said, such offensive statements.
2 weeks ago, he marched them out like fools to defend Islamophobia, and now the member for Ashfield is warming up the opposition benches for them. He won't hand the money back. He won't comment on how convenient it is that a man handed huge NHS contracts by his government is now his party's biggest donor. You have to wonder what the point is of a Prime Minister who can't lead and a party that can't govern.
In response, the Prime Minister acknowledged that Frank Hester's comments were wrong and, he said, racist, but declined to say whether the donations would be returned. Instead, he called out what he said were double standards in the Labour Party.
I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
Former Cabinet Minister Nadine Dorries has been speaking to GB News over the course of this afternoon, and she said that the government's response to the situation has been a car crash, but said there are still bigger questions to be answered.
Who was the person who fixed it for him to give the party £10 million? And what was he promised in return for that £10 million? I think there are questions that need to be asked, because no one just gives £10 million to a political party who's just new on the scene and doesn't expect something back for that kind of money. And in order to remove all of those questions and all of those suspicions, it needs paying back today.
A major people smuggling operation has been intercepted in the UK with the arrest of a suspected high-level figure in a Kurdish organised crime group. Authorities believe the man was significantly involved in smuggling hundreds of people to Britain in boats and in the back of lorries. Officers from the National Crime Agency were supported by Hampshire Police as they detained the 45-year-old. That was at a property in the Kingston area of Portsmouth this morning. He was arrested on suspicion of conspiring to facilitate illegal immigration and money laundering. He is now in custody. Migrants who've been refused asylum here in Britain could be offered thousands of pounds to move to Rwanda. The voluntary scheme would be separate to the Safety of Rwanda bill, which is currently facing delays due to a series of amendments. It would extend current returns policies, which sees some migrants already offered £3,000 to return to their country of origin. Labour says it's evidence the government's Rwanda plan has no chance of succeeding. However, the Home Office has defended the scheme, saying that voluntary returns are an important part of tackling illegal migration. Well, to the US now, where TikTok could be banned. That's unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives has voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to either be sold or blocked. That was with an overwhelming majority. The bill still, though, needs to be passed in the Senate to become law, and President Joe Biden has indicated that he would sign it. However, his Republican challenger, Donald Trump, recently signalled that he'd oppose the ban. Here in the UK, TikTok hasn't been banned before, but you may remember it was blocked from government devices in March of 2023 over data privacy concerns. More than 21,000 households have now been freed from problematic leaseholds after some saw their ground rent double. The competition watchdog says the homeowners will now see their ground rent return to where they were when they first purchased the properties. Many leaseholds trap people in houses that they find difficult to then sell. The government has banned ground rent on new leases for homes purchased after June 2022, and there are also plans to ban leaseholds for new houses. However, the system would remain in place for flats. And Vladimir Putin says that he is ready for nuclear war. He's warned that any US troops who may venture into Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, the Russian president also said that if the US were to carry out any nuclear tests, Russia may do the same. He added that while Moscow is technically prepared, the country is not rushing into it. Those are the headlines. Sophia Wenzel will have more for you at 3:30. But in the meantime, you can get GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or visit gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, let's get cracking. What a show we have ahead. And let's start with this, the race row over whether Rishi Sunak should return 10 million quid to Conservative donor Frank Hester has intensified. Hester allegedly said Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women. It was Sir Keir Starmer's main attack line during today's Prime Minister's questions, with Rishi Sunak reiterating his line that Mr Hester's comments were racist and wrong, but that his remorse should be accepted. However, that has not stopped opposition MPs and even some figures within the Conservative Party saying his donation to the party should be returned as the money is now tainted. Well, I'm now joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. Now, of course, between 12 and 1, you host PMQs live on GB News. I watched it today and I was struck by a sentiment I put out to social media. I don't think I've ever seen a political class as out of touch as this mob at the moment, obsessed with competitive racism. Happy Ramadan, talking about another Gaza ceasefire, this performative minority interest nonsense, sending people absolutely bonkers. When will this lot ever represent the majority?
There might be a wake-up call for what you're describing at the general election, which I expect to be in November. You did hear a lot of tension in the air. It was an unsavoury watch, and my job is to watch it for GB News viewers and interpret it. You had, of course, Keir Starmer talking about Frank Hester and they are dreadful remarks about Diane Abbott, which Number 10 says are racist. Frank Hester had apologised. He's a £10 million donor. What's happening here is Labour are trying to bomb the supply lines of the Tory party. They want to, make a big issue of it, because it's a big issue out there, I think, for some people, certainly amongst their support. Equally, taking 10 million quid off the Tory party, a quarter of their annual income, would be a big win for them. So why not push hard on that? In response, the PM, Mr Sunak, made clear that the remorse should be accepted from Mr Hester. We move on. And then it attacked Labour with remarks from Angela Rayner saying Tories were scum a couple of years ago. David Lammy using the word Nazi. John McDonnell, a former Shadow Chancellor, wanting to lynch Esther McVey, now a cabinet minister back in the day, when and that's before he was a shadow chancellor. Very unedifying. And we did see in responses, we asked for questions from our viewers that we would try and read out with a panel, but many were saying, it's just pretty grim stuff, and how is that even going near to addressing the daily concerns of our viewers? In contrast, Lee Anderson, of course, now he joined Reform UK on Monday. We can reveal that they've raked in 2,000 new members in the past 2 days. That's paying around 30 quid each. I mean, it's extraordinary, kind of Lee Anderson effect taking hold there. Is that, we don't know, should be a short-term issue, but is that part of this frustration with the Westminster politicians rowing about ideas, concepts, insults to each other, rather than addressing the real issues out there?
Well, we'll have that man, Lee Anderson, in later in the show to talk about that very issue. But I asked for a few comments of my own. Right. And I had over 1,000 comments within an hour. Like, you really know you've tapped into something when you get this kind of response. Here's an example of one of those replies to you, Chris. Donna Louise said this: "It's an absolute embarrassment. They all act like a bunch of kids in the playground. I'm ashamed of the entire load of them." And many, many more unprintable comments, Chris. People are just pulling their hair out about the state of politics.
And in our GB views at gbnews.uk, we had Shelley from Kent saying we never get anywhere with PMQs. Why can't they discuss policies that matter? And that's the point, isn't it? I mean, today's big news is the Post Office pardoning of all those sub-postmasters. Why is that not affecting those in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, only England and Wales? We can reveal now on air that later today the government will announce that foreign governments can't back companies that take over our media companies, which is quite a good thing, I think, if you believe in democracy and concern about foreign governments interfering in our democracy, our public life. Yeah, it's a bit, I guess, to be fair to number 10, the questions are of the Prime Minister. He can't ask the questions, he's asked them. Keir Starmer chose to go on these areas. He knows these are areas which were difficult for the Prime Minister, but arguably, whether we learnt anything more is moot.
Andrew Jenkins, of course, was on the show yesterday. Yeah. She made a great point today at PMQs later on about is it time to have a referendum on leaving the ECHR, but it was all lost in the wash.
Well, the PM gave his normal reply. He said, we won't allow foreign courts to boss us around, but he didn't go as far as to say, let's fight the next election as a Tory party on withdrawing from the ECHR, and that's his position. I mean, people like Andrew Jenkins are trying to find out some new policy from the government, but it's been knocked back by number 10.
And a final comment here. I've got loads more to read out throughout the show. Leslie sent this. They're fighting who can be the most woke. The world is going to hell in a handcart, but let's all squabble over inconsequential issues at PMQs. Chris, I've never been struck by this outpouring. Don't forget, I campaigned throughout the Brexit referendum. I
know, and we also mustn't forget that your Twitter following is an echo chamber. People follow you. No, but to be fair, they do follow you because they like what you talk about.
No, a lot of people who very much disagree with my politics are very condemnatory of both sides. I don't think it's a political argument in as far as who do you support. It's an argument about the state of political discourse. And it seems to be in the gutter. Some people are saying.
That's what Nigel Farage, of course, the Honorary President of Reform, he thinks that there's a massive out-of-touch reaction. In almost the way that Lee Anderson was being questioned on Monday showed a lack of understanding of the way he speaks, the way he is, his clumsy language, and that's understood by voters but not by the Westminster bubble. And I wonder we might see a reckoning at the November election. We'll wait and see. OK, well, let's all see what happens. Chris Oak, thank you very much. And, of course, you'll be with us throughout the show. Now, what emotions are instilled in you when you see the magnificent Union Jack, the Union flag? Does it make you feel proud of Britain's heritage and history, or are you filled with guilt and regret because of our colonial history? Well, Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson says there is unspoken grief across the nation and that people feel scared to be proud to be British. Well, this comes after Lee Anderson, that man, declared he wants his country back when announcing his defection to Reform UK from the Conservative Party. Well, let's discuss this further now with the leader of UKIP, Mr Neil Hamilton. Neil, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. I don't know if you heard some of our discourse there about PMQs and this constant squabbling. And, of course, this all feeds in to this underlying notion that these days, Neil, many, many people feel simply existing as a Briton is something to feel deeply ashamed of.
Well, I totally agree with you that the Westminster Punch and Judy show has absolutely nothing to do with ordinary people's real lives, where there's massive suffering and difficulty which needs to be addressed by government. And yet both sides of the House of Commons, overwhelmingly, are just constantly carping and throwing jibes at one another in that embarrassing show of futility which we witnessed today at lunchtime. My view is quite unambiguous. You know, to have been born British is to have drawn first prize in the lottery of life. And who wouldn't want to be British, actually, when you look at the magnificent history of achievement that we have in this country, first of all, in democratic governance terms and introducing the rule of law to parts of the world which previously were benighted. The United States Constitution is basically founded in the principles which were developed in Britain in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. And we have exported democracy all around the world. It hasn't always taken root, of course, in countries which were formerly part of the British Empire, but also our contribution in the fields of medicine, humanitarian action. You know, Britain suppressed the slave trade, which had been endemic in all around the world for thousands of years. We took the lead in suppressing the Atlantic slave trade, and in so many areas and walks of life, you know, we have led the world. Who wouldn't be proud to be British? Of course, I'm not proud of this embarrassing apology for a Conservative government, still less a modern Labour Party. And Britain does have a spotted record, of course, because with our belief in tolerance, we actually made it possible for Karl Marx to write Das Kapital in the British Museum, as a result of which tens of millions of people around the world have lost their lives by communist regimes. But on balance, Britain, I think, as a nation, has given more to the world than any other country, which is good.
Neil, in 1941, George Orwell famously wrote, "England is perhaps the only great country whose intellectuals are ashamed of their own nationality," in his essay, The Lion and the Unicorn. That's true today, isn't it? The very same notion is true today. We see it in academia, we see it in the higher echelons of the media, we see it in the church, we see it in the Home Office. Why? Why is that taken hold this way?
I simply don't understand it. It's utterly irrational. I mean, George Orwell also said, a left-wing intellectual would far rather be caught stealing from a poor box than to be seen standing for the national anthem. That's the attitude of these people who don't believe in nations, actually. They have this airy-fairy idea of internationalism, which has actually caused more misery around the world in the last few hundred years than anything else. The path to hell is paved with good intentions, as we all know. But, I don't understand the mentality. People want to talk down this country and its achievements. I mean, no country's historical record is absolutely spotless, and of course we can all agree and disagree about what's moral and what isn't moral. But on balance, Britain's achievements have been absolutely magnificent. For a small island on the periphery of Western Europe, tiny population, in 1800 our population was 5 or 6 million, something like that. And yet the achievements of the people who were living at that time, which have been handed down to current generations, are just colossal. I mean, compared with today, it's just incomparable. And I just wish we could get back to that feeling within ourselves that we are a great country. We should be proud of our heritage, and we should build on it, not seek to desecrate it and destroy it.
Well, Neil Hamilton, many out there will agree, although a study this week showed that the UK is the second most depressed nation on earth. There seems to be a lot of inward soul searching about what we stand for, what we were and where we are going. I think the only more depressed nation, I believe, was Uzbekistan, which just goes to show you where we're at. Neil Hamilton, thank you very much for joining us on the show. It's always a pleasure to have your company. Now, we'll have loads more on that story throughout the show. Please get in touch with your views on that. Are you proud to be British, or are you now made to feel ashamed of what our nation has become? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. And there's plenty of coverage on our website of that story, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. Now, it's time now for the latest Great British Giveaway and your chance to win 12,345 quid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in cash, and a whole host of seasonal treats. And here's how all of that could be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Get stuck in. Well, you're watching or listening to GB News. Coming up, Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch signs what is being called a landmark deal with Texas, designed to unlock huge markets for both economies. Just what could this mean from the oil-rich superstate? Liam Halligan will fill us in with all the details in just a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Mail on Sunday, and the University of Buckingham is calling out wokery at the University of Cambridge. So I guess the culture wars must be almost over then, Josh.
Almost, yeah. Cambridge University discriminating against rich, white, privileged, privately
educated men, claims...
The worst kind.
Basically me. Claims Vice-Chancellor of rival institution, which is launching a degree course on the rise of woke culture. Now, I 100% agree with this. I applied to get into Cambridge, and I didn't get in because I was too thick.
Oh, wow, so it wasn't the DEI mafia?
No, unfortunately, it was pre-DEI. So it's like a double insult now.
Were you one of those guys who was like had a B average? You know, you look like you should be an A because you act like an A.
I act like an A.
You act
I've
like
got
an
glasses.
A. Yeah,
they're fake. I don't even have to. They don't even have lenses in them.
Lewis, do you think that this is a little bit cynical? Because I looked up this University of Buckingham, and they opened in 1973, and their tagline on the internet is "the home of the two-year degree." They're trying to bring down Cambridge University with this.
Well, why not pick the biggest? I mean, that's why we should. We should be attacking the BBC 24/7 on this thing.
I thought we were.
We aren't. We don't mention it enough.
Listen.
What I found shocking about this story is Buckingham is the country's oldest private university, and was founded in 1976. Something is wrong there. What do you think? Was Oxford founded by the government? I don't think it was. Was Cambridge?
No, absolutely not. I looked up Cambridge was 1209.
Yes, exactly.
So you can
it
get...
wasn't a government
But this
grant.
is actually quite scary. They can do a course on the origins of the woke movement. I'm just saying, someone's going to have a degree, and our job is going to be under threat. They're going to know much more than us.
Never.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 3:25 is your time. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch signs what has been called a landmark deal with the Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. The Texas trade agreement is designed to unlock huge markets for both countries, with the Texas governor saying strengthening the bond between Texas and the United Kingdom is crucial for our shared economies to prosper. And I'll drink to that. Well, joining me now in the studio is Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor with On the Money. Liam, always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Now, this is a story that I get very, very excited about. But first, let's touch on some other good news this morning. GDP, we've dodged recession.
Yeah, let's just quickly whip through the GDP numbers. We did them in the last hour, but they are important. GDP is, of course, gross domestic product. All the goods and services produced in an economy in a single year. We learnt this morning that the British economy, after contracting in the last half of last year, has started growing again. Let's have a quick look at those numbers, Martin. Between July and September last year, compared to the same period in 2022, the economy, GDP, contracted 0.1%. It then shrunk 0.3% October to December. They're your two consecutive quarters of economic shrinkage. That's called a recession. But hey presto, in January, we learned this morning, GDP expanded by 0.2%. These are tiny numbers, but at least they're going in the right direction. There is an interest rate decision on the 21st of March next Thursday, the Monetary Policy Committee. On balance, this will make them feel slightly less pressure that they need to lower interest rates. They'll think, oh, our interest rate rises, we're at 5.25%. They haven't totally squeezed the economy. They're squeezing inflation, but the economy is growing again. Maybe we can keep interest rates high for a bit longer. So we're totally satisfied that we've slain that inflation dragon.
Now, let's move on to this Texas deal. Precisely the sort of deal we were promised by Kemi post-Brexit Britain. Texan Governor Greg Abbott, politically, her and Kemi Badenoch, two peas in a pod. And Texas, what a magnificent, massive economy. And, of course, its number one export, petroleum products.
Well, look, Texas is a mighty economy. The economy of Texas is worth £1.9 trillion a year. The whole UK economy is only worth £2.2 trillion, so it's almost as big as the UK itself. Now, we don't have a trade deal with the US as a whole, nor does the European Union, and the European Union's been trying to negotiate a trade deal with America for the best part of 40 years. The US never, or very, very rarely, signs trade deals because it's so powerful and its market is so big it can dictate the terms without signing trade deals. So what the government's been doing since Brexit, since we've been allowed to negotiate our own trade deals as the UK rather than as the EU, it's been going for eating the elephant in chunks, if you like. And there is Kemi Badenoch with Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. They are political soulmates, as you say. We've signed 8 trade deals now with individual US states, and Texas is easily the biggest. This is the only one that the governor of the state involved has actually come to the UK in order to do the signing. We also signed a trade deal, of course, in Florida. Ron DeSantis, Kemi Badenoch actually went to Florida to sign that trade deal. But look, why is this important? It's important because Texas is a big economy. The UK already exports around £12 billion worth of goods and services to Texas each year. The US is by far and away our biggest single country trading partner, so we export more to continental Europe as a whole, but America is our biggest single country trading partner, about 15 to 20% of our trade, depending on the year in question. And this can only enhance that trade. It's going to be good for financial services, legal services, it's going to be good for manufacturing, it's going to be good for petrochemicals. As you say, it could be good for the energy complex, given Texas's expertise in that area. And one area which I know for a fact the Trade Secretary is really interested in and highlighted in her remarks is what we call the hydrogen economy. Yes. There's a lot really interesting going on in Texas in terms of harnessing hydrogen, the most common element in the world. It has big energy potential. Hydrogen's already used as a fuel in many, many industrial contexts. The UK is interested in expanding that. It needs a lot of technology, it needs a lot of innovation and development, but this tie-up between the UK and Texas will help in that regard.
And Liam, is this a magnificent taste of what could be coming down the pipeline? Because Texas is a pure red Republican, red meat state. This is about as Donald Trump as you get. If Trump were to get in, is this an indication of how future trade deals could go, a cementing of that special relationship?
Well, as you say, trade deals are largely about commerce, but they are about politics as well, political will. And, of course, there is a sort of political affiliation between the Conservative Party in the UK and Texas, which is traditionally a Republican state, as you say, rather than the Conservative Party in, say, California, which is traditionally a Democrat state. Yeah. The Californian economy, by the way, is much, much bigger than Texas. The Californian economy is £3 trillion. It's almost 50% bigger again than the UK economy. It's absolutely vast. I can't see us signing a trade deal with California anytime soon, unfortunately. But, Martin, and this is important, by eating the elephant in chunks, if you like, by doing trade deals with US states rather than the country as a whole, this Texas deal means that we now have at least memorandums of understanding, trade deals with states in America that make up almost a fifth now of US GDP. So this is quite big stuff. There's a long way to go. And let's be clear. We trade with other US states without trade deals. It's just the terms are less favourable. We've been trading with the US as a whole. It's our biggest single country, as I said, trading partner for a long time without a trade deal. But what a trade deal does, it makes the trade easier. It means there's less red tape. It means the trade is more likely to expand than contract. So objectively speaking, she won't get a lot of praise for it for those who don't like Brexit. But I think objectively speaking, most professional economists would think this is a pretty good thing.
Yeah, Liam Elligan, a double-barrel blast of good news. No recession, massive bumper trade deal with Texas. What a great start to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, there's loads more still to come between now and 4 4 o'clock, and the government is so desperate to sort out their migrant chaos that ministers are actually considering paying failed asylum seekers to move to Rwanda. You couldn't make it up. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. I'm Sophia Wensler from the GB Newsroom at 3:31. Your headlines. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Sir Keir Starmer has confronted the Prime Minister over the remarks, pressing Rishi Sunak to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. In today's Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader asked whether Rishi Sunak was proud to be supported by someone making such offensive statements. A new law aimed at quashing the wrongful convictions of sub-postmasters will be introduced by the government. More than 700 post office staff were found guilty of crimes, including theft and fraud, because of a faulty IT system. Rishi Sunak says the legislation is a crucial step forward towards resolving the largest miscarriage of justice in Britain's history. Labour welcomed the progress, but says it won't be enough to deliver full justice. A man suspected of leading a major smuggling operation in the UK and bringing hundreds of people into the country in boats and lorries has been arrested in Hampshire. The 45-year-old suspect, who is thought to be a key figure in a Kurdish organised crime group, was detained at a property in the Kingston area of Portsmouth this morning. He was arrested on suspicion of conspiring to facilitate illegal immigration and money laundering. He is now in custody and being questioned by investigators. And TikTok could be banned in the US unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to be sold or blocked with an overwhelming majority. The bill still needs to pass the Senate to become law. Here in the UK, TikTok hasn't been banned before, but it was blocked from government devices in 2023 over data privacy concerns. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2803 and €1.1698 euros. The price of gold is £1,696 and 76 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,766 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, you're watching or listening to GB News. Let me know your thoughts on the big stories of the day. Are you proud to be British? And also, I want to know whether you think the current political class are completely out of touch. Are they ignoring the majority while being obsessed with minority interests? GBviews at gbnews.com is the email. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the king was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America, so which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the King is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Almost 3:39, beg your pardon. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, wrongfully convicted sub-postmasters and postmistresses are a step closer to getting justice today with the introduction of a new law to clear their names. It's a landmark move because that's normally the job of the courts, and it means people could see their convictions quashed in a matter of months. Well, joining me now to tell us more is GB News' presenter Pip Thompson. Pip, welcome to the show. This has been a long time coming. Great news.
Progress is finally being made, Martin, but the cynical amongst us might say, well, it's off the back of the ITV dramatisation of the Horizon IT scandal, and also the fact maybe that we're in an election year. But whatever you think, it is great news for hundreds of former sub-postmasters and mistresses whose livelihoods have been destroyed, their reputations ripped to shreds. So what's going to happen here is that those people who were convicted, their convictions will be quashed and they will receive an interim payment and then have the chance to accept a full and final offer of £600,000. There's several compensation schemes going. There's another one, and these are for people who weren't convicted but erroneously gave money back because they thought they had to, gave money back from their own pockets, some of them £20,000, £30,000, £40,000 upwards. Now, they're entitled to a fixed sum award of £75,000 through this compensation scheme. If they've already settled for less money, then they will have their compensation topped up. So it is a little bit complicated, but the upshot is that this bill was announced in Parliament this lunchtime by the Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollinrake. He said it is an exceptional response to what has been classed as the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history. He says it doesn't set a precedent when it comes to letting politicians overturn the decisions of the court. But what is also interesting here, Martin, is that it only applies to England and Wales. People in Scotland and those in Northern Ireland, they have their own legal processes to go through. Well, earlier on GB News, we spoke to the former Tory MP, Lord Arbuthnot, who has campaigned tirelessly for years to get justice. This is what he had to say about his reaction.
There is, for example, still in the system, a legal presumption that computer records are reliable. That is something that we've got to overturn. But how we overturn it hasn't yet been ironed out. But that is something that we've got to deal with. And until that is dealt with, we can't be sure that everything's been ironed out. But equally, the culture in the post office remains deeply suspect, as we heard from some of the select committee hearings that have gone on in the last couple of months. And so there's a lot still to be done.
Plenty still to be done. As of the 1st of March, £179 million had been paid to some 2,800 people. There are expected to be hundreds more, some of whom haven't come forward yet. This bill should receive royal assent, Martin, before MPs break up for the summer, so we're looking at July. And then compensation payments start coming through in August. So that's what, April, May, June, July. So that's still a whole 5 months away.
Yeah, Pip Thompson, excellent. So I reckon you're right to be cynical about the politics of this, but nevertheless, it's been a long time coming and justice has been served at last for those submatters and submitters. Pip Thompson, thank you very much. Now, is this Rishi Sunak having one last desperate throw of the dice to try and tackle the migrant crisis? Failed asylum seekers will be offered £3,000 to encourage them to move to Rwanda voluntarily under a new scheme drawn up by ministers, and it's aimed at removing tens of thousands of migrants who have no right to remain in the UK but can't be returned to their country of origin forcibly. Well, let's cut across now to Downing Street and speak to GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, it's got to the stage where they can't get them to go of their own accord, so they're having to bribe them to go to Rwanda.
Well, yes, indeed. But Martin, actually, this is an extension of an existing scheme because there already is a scheme for failed asylum seekers to be encouraged financially to the tune of up to £3,000 to leave to go back to where they came from. Now, this obviously is new in that they want to send people to Rwanda, but they are already paying plenty of failed asylum seekers to effectively go away. So just to give you a few stats, last year the Home Office rejected 31,000 asylum applications and 19,000 foreign nationals voluntarily resettled to their home country, of which 4,000 of those were failed asylum seekers, 15,000 were foreign criminals or people who had overstayed their visa. So it's a scheme that already exists in terms of paying them to go back to where they came from, but paying them to go to Rwanda is, of course, different. And I think it's to give the government a contingency plan, if you like, to make use of Rwanda. We know that they've spent millions of pounds. We know that the Safety of Rwanda bill has been heavily amended in the Lords. The Commons will remove those amendments. It will go through, but then there's likely to be legal challenges. So if Rishi Sunak can't get those flights full of people who've crossed on small boats recently off to Rwanda, they potentially can still get flights of people off to Rwanda that have been overstaying and have not got asylum here. So one way to use Rwanda, no matter what happens with the bill in the Parliament at the moment.
Thank you, Catherine Forster. £3,000 in cash, free housing for 5 years, and an offer of guaranteed work when you get there. I don't know, the state of this country, maybe a lot of Brits wouldn't mind taking Rishi Sunak up on this offer. Thank you very much, Catherine Forster. Excellent. Now, plenty more to bring you in the show, including, but first, in a GB News series, Innovation Britain, we're looking at the success of British manufacturing around this magnificent country.
At Dynamec in Castleford. Here they produce a product that is sold across the globe. And you, David, are the brains behind it.
I am indeed, yeah. I designed a tool for removing locking wheel nuts. I did it over 25 years ago now. We found out a young guy that come to me wanted his lock nuts removing, so I made a tool to do it. And then it sort of grew from there. I contacted the RAC, the AA, and it just become a market leader, really.
So you created a patented product that's now evolved over time.
Yes.
And where are you today with this?
We've expanded, we've moved several premises over the years. We started off in a little butcher's shop that we rented, and then we bought a unit, then we bought a bigger unit, and then we've invested heavily in the CNC machines.
So you're producing these all here on site?
All here on site. I'm a big believer in making it in the UK, and I want to prove it can be done. We are doing it.
So what's the success of your product today?
It's a market leader. Dynamic's known to be the market leader in locking wheel and remover tools. You know, some people have tried copying it in the past, but we always lead them. You know, they're following us. So we prove it can be done.
And this is a family-run business, isn't it?
It is, yeah, true family-run business. My son, when he was 15, he could actually program all these machines. He did AutoCAD. He's sort of before his time, really. But now he's 18, he's working here, and he can operate these machines no problem. So I really believe that, you know, we've got to get young people on this type of equipment and actually go back to how it used to be, like when I was younger. You know, get them on it, get them interested in it.
Absolutely. You've got a great product here, sold globally, and you're bringing the youth through this business.
We are.
Congratulations.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with dry and bright conditions across much of the east. Just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers, though, for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures. It could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere, again, still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival today, and the day was previously referred to as Ladies' Day, where attendees, celebrities and members of the royal family would show off their high-end fashion outfits. But this year, of course, the centuries-old racing tradition has undergone a woke rebranding to include men and maybe even Zers, and is now being called Style Wednesday. Well, utter killjoys, but let's speak now with GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is in Cheltenham for us. Jack, splendid hat once again. The woke are trying to sap the fun out of this.
Well, of course, it's not been known as Ladies' Day here at Cheltenham since 2018. It's come under different names in the following years since. Last year it was called Festival Wednesday, this year calling it Style Wednesday. It wasn't necessarily advertised too well as being changed to Style Wednesday, but that's what is on the programmes and the race cards that the festival and the race goers here have been having. Still plenty of very colourful hats on show, including, of course, from Queen Camilla, who's here to watch, of course, the Queen Mother's champion chase as well. But not everyone, of course, is happy about this change. We spoke to Nadine Dorries a little bit earlier on.
It's outrageous. It's just outrageous. What is particularly galling about it is it's done so quietly. There was no fanfare, no announcements. It was just slipped under. The first I knew was when it arrived in my programme. I thought I was coming to Ladies' Day. So when my programme arrived, I thought I was discovered I was at a Style Day. You know, some people have said to me, well, you know, the men put a lot of effort into, so it's all about style. Nonsense. You know, it's at every turn you see that anything to do with raising the status of womanhood or women, Ladies' Day, motherhood. It's this constant erosion. And what's happened is the Jockey Club has just buckled under pressure from the trans lobby. That's what's happened. And what they really need to think about is, and I said this in my column in the Daily Mail yesterday, who is here? Who are the people who are here? You know, what's happening on Ladies' Day is there are lots of ladies around who've dressed up for Ladies' Day because this is our day. I mean, what are they going to do next? Say Mothering Sunday is no longer, it's Person Sunday. And following so quick on Mothering Sunday, it just seems utterly bizarre.
So, of course, as you can hear there, Nadine Dorries really not happy with this change from Ladies' Day to Style Wednesday this year. But the Jockey Club and the racecourse clear about why they've done that. They say they wanted to focus this year about sustainability in fashion. They're calling it fast horses, slow fashion. And the Jockey Club more widely have changed a lot of their rules around what to wear to their races. They're dropping the more formal dress codes, mandatory dress codes for most races, saying that they want to open this up to the wider community and show that this is for everyone, and they wanted to make these races for people to be able to come to them in something which is maybe a bit more comfortable for them. That doesn't mean that people haven't been dressing up. Lots of colourful hats on show, as I was saying as well, on day 2 here at Cheltenham.
Jack Carson, excellent. And now we know why George Galloway isn't wearing a hat in Parliament. Nadine Dorries has nicked it. Jack Carson, thank you very much. Superb stuff. Now you are watching or listening to GB News. Coming up, I'm asking, are the political class completely out of touch? I've had hundreds and hundreds of emails on this already. I'll read out a selection after this. But first, it's time for your latest weather forecast with Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with Dry and bright conditions across much of the east. Just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers, though, for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures. It could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere, again, still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner?
You've won £18,000.
Oh, flipping heck. I don't know what to say.
Enter our massive spring giveaway with 3 big seasonal prizes to be won. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you all. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Coming up, GB News understands that the UK is to ban foreign governments from owning British newspapers, and that would effectively block the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, bid to take over the Daily Telegraph. What does that mean and why should we care? Next, has the political class ever been more out of touch, and are they too obsessed with minority interests? PMQ today, the main political event of the week, saw the two main parties squabble over who is the most racist, Gaza and Happy Ramadan. When will they stop ignoring the majority and tackle the real issues facing this country? And of course, this comes as Lee Anderson, during his defection to Reform, said he wanted his country back. We'll be asking throughout the show, do you feel proud to British, or are you being made to feel ashamed of your national identity? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure and a joy to have your company. Now, I want to hear from you today. Hundreds and hundreds of emails already on the topic. Are the political class totally and utterly out of touch? Arguing today at PMQs about who's the most racist, wishing happy Ramadan to the Muslim community. Once again, droning on about a ceasefire in Gaza. Many people scratching their heads and wondering, what planet are these people on? Are they representing ordinary Brits, or are they disappearing down a rabbit hole of minority interest? Get in touch, all the usual ways, gbviews@gbnews.com. Plus, do you feel proud to be British, or is our flag now sullied by the fact we're continually told we're a racist, unwelcoming nation with a poisonous history? Let us know what you think. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Sophia Wenzel.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. Your top story this hour. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Sir Keir Starmer has confronted the Prime Minister over the remarks, pressing Rishi Sunak to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. In today's Prime Minister's questions, a Labour leader asked whether Rishi Sunak was proud to be supported by someone making such offensive statements.
2 weeks ago, he marched them out like fools to defend Islamophobia, and now the member for Ashfield is warming up the opposition benches for them. He won't hand the money back. He won't comment on how convenient it is that a man handed huge NHS contracts by his government is now his party's biggest donor. You have to wonder what the point is of a Prime Minister who can't lead and a party that can't govern.
The Prime Minister acknowledged Frank Hester's comments were wrong and racist, but declined to say his donations would be returned, instead calling out what he said were double standards in the Labour Party.
I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
Meanwhile, former Cabinet Minister Nadine Dorries told GB News that the government's response has been a car crash and there are still bigger questions to be answered.
Who was the person who fixed it for him to give the party £10 million, and what was he promised in return for that £10 million? I think there are questions that need to be asked, because no one just gives £10 million to a political party who's just new on the scene and doesn't expect something back for that kind of money. And in order to remove all of those questions and all of those suspicions, it needs paying back today.
Andy MacDonald has had the Labour whip restored after he was cleared of breaking party rules by using a controversial slogan at a pro-Palestine rally. The MP for Middlesbrough was suspended in October after he used the phrase "from the river to the sea" during a speech at a pro-Palestine event. The words refer to the land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, which many find offensive because it appears to refer to all of Israel. A Labour spokesperson said Mr MacDonald had been reminded that elected representatives must be mindful of how their words are interpreted. In other news, a major people smuggling operation has been intercepted in the UK with the arrest of a suspected high-level figure in a Kurdish organised crime group. Authorities believe he's significantly involved in smuggling people to Britain in boats and in the back of lorries. Officers from the National Crime Agency were supported by Hampshire Police as they detained the 45-year-old at a property in the Kingston area of Portsmouth this morning. He was arrested on suspicion of conspiring to facilitate illegal immigration and money laundering and is now in custody. Vladimir Putin says he's ready for nuclear war, warning that any US troops who venture to Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, the Russian president also said that if the US were to carry out any nuclear tests, Russia may do the same. He added that while Moscow is technically prepared, the country is not rushing into it. And TikTok could be banned in the US unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to be sold or blocked with an overwhelming majority. The bill still needs to pass the Senate to become law. President Joe Biden has indicated that he would sign it. However, his Republican challenger, Donald Trump, recently signalled that he'd oppose the ban. Here in the UK, TikTok hasn't been banned before, but it was blocked from government devices in 2023 over data privacy concerns. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, there has been growing speculation about the future of the Telegraph newspaper, which has been a mainstay of British journalism for almost 2 centuries. And now, GB News understands ministers are set to bring in new legislation to block foreign governments from buying British newspapers. And this will come as a hammer blow to a UAE-backed company's efforts to buy the Daily Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph and the Spectator. Figures in both the Conservative and Labour parties had expressed alarm at the proposed takeover of the Telegraph by Real-Bird IMI, which is 75% financed by the UAE. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forser, to discuss this. Now, Catherine, so people who aren't out there aren't aware of this story, this is not about stopping foreign individuals purchasing newspapers. It's about a foreign state taking over a newspaper, and now Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has stepped in. Why?
Yes, that's exactly right. So basically, the Telegraph and the Spectator were put up for sale over a year ago when the Barclay brothers accrued debts, or massive debts, and they've been trying to find a buyer. The United Arab Emirates, this bid that's come from them, 75% is effectively from the United Arab Emirates vice president. So effectively the state, the country. And that is the problem, the idea that basically a foreign government could have the controlling influence over a British publication and what that means for freedom of the press. So there's been a lot of concern, obviously, people working for and with those publications, but also readers and at the high levels of government and across parties. So it seems now today that the government are gearing up to ban foreign state control of having control of news organisations in the United Kingdom, that if it's a foreign state to have a majority control, that will not go ahead, which will be a massive relief.
And many people would say this is a fair point. It's one thing to buy a foreign football club. It's one thing to buy an airline. But if you're using a newspaper not only to whitewash your own nation's political credibility or reputation, but even perhaps to influence the editorial policy and also thereby the political shape, particularly on the Conservative side of the parliamentary divide, as a nation state, that feels a step too far.
Yes. Absolutely. And Fraser Nelson, the editor of The Spectator, which would go along with The Telegraph, it's very prestigious, it's seen by many as sort of the Tory Bible, has been pushing very hard for this, saying, look, we cannot have a situation where effectively a foreign country owns a big chunk of our supposedly free press. This would be really bad for democracy, and it would be the thin end of the wedge, and saying too, there's nowhere in the world, in the Western world, that you would have this situation. So I think there will be immense relief. What we don't know, of course, is who ultimately will take over the Telegraph and the Spectator, but you can be sure now that it won't be a foreign country. But I think worth saying, there are many wealthy people funding newspapers, websites, TV stations here who don't live here, and it's foreign money, but they are individuals, and that's the difference. They're individuals, not a country.
Key point brilliantly set out. Let's also reflect, if we can, upon today's PMQs. I thought, and many people who've emailed in, hundreds of people have emailed in saying they felt they've never seen a political class as out of touch with the general public as they saw today. And I'm talking about these people lived through Brexit, same as we did. An obsession with who's the most racist of the political parties, an obsession with Gaza, with ceasefires, with happy Ramadan. Meanwhile, people looking on thinking, what planet are these people on?
Yes, I sat in the press gallery today and looked down, and I must say it was quite depressing because it was almost like a competition.
Yes.
You're awful, well, you're more awful, and who's the most awful? And you think no wonder so many people are disengaged, feel politically homeless. You know, we've seen George Galloway win in Rochdale, appealing to Muslims who feel that nobody speaks to them. We've seen Lee Anderson now go over to Reform. We've seen Reform surging in the polls. So many people who feel that neither Labour or the Conservative Party speak for them. And, you know, it was really quite dispiriting, I thought, today.
I want to read out a few comments, Catherine. No doubt these will chime with you. Matt said this: it's just endless political point scoring from all, whilst this once great country they're supposed to be running goes to the dogs. Jean says this: my thoughts exactly. What a complete woke basket case the UK has become with this load of upper-class Burlington Berties in charge. And I'm sorry to say Richard Tice might also fit this description. They were all having playground tantrums and hissy fits about hurty feelings while the UK burns. Is there a real something in this, Catherine? People look on aghast. Have they just become so obsessed with minority interest now they're just completely out of touch with what the majority think?
Well, there'll be many people who will think that the story about Frank Hester, that it's all a mountain being made out of a molehill. But I think it is worth saying that he did say in a public place that a black female MP should be shot. Now, of course he didn't mean it. Of course it wasn't a call for violence. But people making speeches in public surely should be a bit careful how they phrase things.
It was a few years ago now. Was it 2019, 2018?
Yeah, it was 2019. But, you know, I'm not sure if there's any argument really for calling for people to be shot. You know,
should they hand the money back, do you think? 10 million quid? They won't do it, will they?
I really would be astonished if that happened because it's an election year. He's their biggest donor last year. I think they had 48 million given. This is 10 of it. Famous last words, I can't see any world in which they decide to hand that money back. And they say, look, he's apologised, he's shown remorse, and we move on. They would like to move on.
And isn't that the real story? This almost kind of pearl clutching over the racism, is it actually about trying to hold the Tories' purse? It's about trying to take 10 million quid away from them at a time where they know every penny counts in what will be a bitterly fought election campaign coming forward.
Well, everything that happens in Westminster at the moment, we have to see through the prism of the fact there's an election coming, and everything that's going on is with an eye to Labour trying to put themselves in a better position, trying to rubbish the Conservatives and vice versa, even more than you would have in normal times. So, of course, Labour are going to say, hand the money back. Of course they are, but if it was them, would they? And I mean, don't forget, we had... sure, Rishi Sunak was very slow to act, wasn't he, to call this out. He took a long time to get to the comments were racist. But look what happened with Sir Keir Starmer and Azhar Ali in Rochdale. They had those comments. They took a long time to actually drop him as a candidate, and then they had no one. So people can look on and think, well, this is clear cut, why don't they act? But it takes them a long time. And, you know, on all sides, sure, there's all these allegations of racism. I think most people would think what he said was out of order. But again, with Diane Abbott and Labour, she was suspended, of course, from the Labour Party nearly a year ago. For comments that many people thought were anti-Semitic, saying that Jewish people didn't experience racism in the same way as black people.
Which is astonishing. Racism, if you frame it in the right way.
Anti-Semitism is racism, is it not? Most people would say. So she was suspended. The investigation is ongoing. We pressed Keir Starmer's spokesman at lunch, and all he would say was it's an independent investigation, it's ongoing. But, you know, why is it taking so long? And you can see, can't you, If they decide to keep her and she runs as a Labour MP, they'll be open to accusations of letting somebody who's anti-Semitic continue saying the Labour Party hasn't changed. If they kick her out permanently, then all hell will let loose because she was the first female black MP to be elected. So you can see why they don't really want to make a decision.
Yeah, meanwhile, the whole country looks on, just scratches their head and asks what planet are they on. Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Excellent. Now, Britain faces an alarming rise in intimidation and threats of violence against those perceived to have insulted Islam, and that's according to a new report. The findings come from a study by Alexander Melagru-Hitchens, a researcher at King's College London. And joining me now to discuss this is the author and academic Professor Frank Furedy. Frank, welcome to the show. And you've written a column, an excellent column, I say, in today's Mail about this precise thing. And you have grave concerns about us creeping from a position of medieval times where we had outright blasphemy. Of course, that changed, but now you believe, Frank, we're creeping back towards de facto blasphemy in the UK.
Yes, what we have is an informal blasphemy law, which basically says that you cannot make any critical comments that are directed at Islam or at Muslim people or Islamism, which basically means that a lot of people are forced to censor themselves. I talk to teachers who tell me that they are too scared to discuss the Holocaust in case it offends some of their Muslim students, and therefore they are keeping quiet about it. I've talked to history teachers who said that they are so careful when they're discussing historical facts not to offend Muslim sensibilities that they just merely change the subject. So we have a really big problem on our hands where the mere mention of the word Islamophobia is sufficient to shut discussion down. And I think that's, to me, is almost like a new form of blasphemy law where certain things can no longer be said without feeling that you're going to be punished.
And Frank, in 9 days' time, it will be the 3rd anniversary of the Batley Grammar School teacher being forced into exile for showing a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, still in hiding in fear of his life, living under a different identity with his family and his wife. We've seen the Trojan horse scandal. We've seen a 14-year-old autistic boy in Wakefield damaging a Quran accidentally. Frank, a lot of people think we've already got blasphemy laws de facto in this country. We're not standing up to it. What can be done about it, Frank?
I think we need to start taking ourselves seriously. A little bit of courage would not go amiss. So in the case of the Batley School, I was shocked and surprised by the cowardice of the school authorities, by the willingness of the police to say, well, go into hiding. And when you think about it, you know, a British citizen cannot make a public appearance for fear of being hurt or intimidated. And therefore, it's almost like as if it's a Second World War situation where you got to somehow change your identity just because you've offended a certain number of people who make it their business to shut you down, to scare you, and in some cases to exercise violence against you. And I think it's about time that we realize we've got a mega problem here, because as long as we ignore it and as long as we shut up the minute somebody says Islamophobia, I think our society is going to get unraveled and we'll be almost turned into a quasi-theocratic state, at least on the ground in certain areas of the country, where we almost go back into a kind of hyper-technocratic medieval world of blasphemy culture, which is not what we need in a democratic society.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought. Frank Furedy, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And yet many feel it might get worse because we may have a Labour government incoming redefining Islamophobia, redefining what that means and who can be punished and how. And many people fear it could be about to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. Now, you could win the spring essentials in our latest Great British giveaway, and that's a garden gadget package, a shopping spree, and £12,345, £1, 2, 3, 4, £5 in cash, tax-free. Here's all the details.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, fill your boots now. You're watching or listening to GB News. Coming up, Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch signs what is being called a landmark deal with Texas, designed to unlock huge markets for both economies. Just what could this mean? Well, Liam Halligan will fill us in with all the details in just a moment. It's awesome. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Household energy bills will fall by £238 per year. Good news. An average of £20 a month. That's as Ofgem unveils its new energy price cap. So joining us in the studio is GB News economics and business editor Liam Halligan.
The Ofgem energy price cap, that's the regulated amount that energy suppliers are allowed to charge, will fall from £1,928 a year to £1,690. That's from April the 1st. That's a drop of about 12%. That should save the typical household 20 quid a month. Prices are cheaper than they were, but they're still very elevated by historic standards. Certainly if you're an American household, a French household, even a Spanish or an Italian household, you're paying a lot less for your electricity and your energy in general than you are here in the UK. The energy companies have been a bit tricksy with the government because while they are lowering the energy price cap and the headlines are, well, your energy bills are coming down, blah, 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 the energy providers have actually chiselled out from Ofgem the permission to charge households an extra £2.33 a month on average. And the energy companies say that is money which they need, the energy companies, in order to support households who have got big debts on their energy bills. I don't know about you, but whenever I talk to people down the pub about energy bills, many of them say, well, the energy company's got like £2,000 of my money and it won't give it back to me. What's going on here? So there are lots of concerns about customer balances with energy companies, and it's also worth saying that as part of this announcement, the bit that no one will notice is that the energy companies are being able to charge all households to try and flatter the energy companies' balance sheets, which to me, on first reading, seems a bit odd.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Earlier on breakfast.
Welcome to the programme. Leading for us this morning, what took so long? Pressure on the PM as another Tory racism row has emerged.
I think it was very disappointing that I was one of the only voices yesterday morning to come straight off the bat and say this was a racist comment.
Nobody wanted to listen because it was the post office, this trusted brand that was in every shop, local shop. and serve the community.
And there's no danger in sleeping your baby on his or her back either. So do it, and you severely reduce the risk of cot death happening to you.
Since breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 4:25. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has signed what is being called a landmark deal with the Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. The Texas trade agreement is designed to unlock huge markets for both economies, with the Texas governor saying strengthening the bond between Texas and the United Kingdom is crucial for our shared economies to prosper. A feel-good story and a feel-good guy to discuss it with, because I'm joined now by Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and politics business editor, with On the Money. So, Liam, pleasure to have you in the studio as ever. This is precisely the sort of nimble, progressive deal we were promised we'd be able to do in post-Brexit Britain. But first, before this, there's some great news today about GDP.
Yeah, let's talk quickly about GDP, gross domestic product. That is the size of our economy, all the goods and services produced in an economy in a single year. That's what GDP is. And the numbers that came out this morning, they were positive, only just, but at least they're positive, and that's a good thing. Let's have a quick look at the numbers. So between July and September 2023, GDP contracted by 0.1% compared to the same period in 2022. Between October and December, GDP shrank again by 0.3%. There's the two successive quarters, 3-month periods of economic contraction. That is a recession. But this morning we learnt that in January, Martin, the January figure only came out this morning. In the single month of January, GDP actually expanded by 0.2% compared to January 2023. So that's good news. So that means if we continue to have an expansion over the first quarter, and it looks as if we will, then recession is officially over. We've got an interest rate decision next Thursday on the 21st of March. The Monetary Policy Committee will look closely at those GDP figures. I think on balance, Martin, the fact that the economy is now growing again, it means the Monetary Policy Committee, they may be emboldened to keep interest rates where they are and not give us all the cut, or some of us the cut that we want. Obviously, pensioners, those living on fixed incomes off interest, they want interest rates to stay at 5.25%. I think on balance, today's GDP numbers, they are just preliminary, make it less likely that the Bank of England will cut interest rates next week.
And you normally call these things right, Mystic Liam. Now, meanwhile, Texas, an astonishing economy, massive numbers, and its number one export, petrochemicals.
Texas is a huge economy. Texas is just one of the states of America, of course. It's the second biggest economy in terms of states of America. The Texan economy is worth £1.9 trillion a year equivalent. The whole UK economy is worth £2.2 trillion. So, you know, it's bigger than the English economy, if you like. It's a massive market. It's a world-ranking economy in its own right. We don't have a trade deal with the United States, nor does the European Union have a trade deal with the United States. Very few countries do. Because America is so powerful, it tends to keep its options open and not sign trade deals. So what we've been doing since Brexit, since we've been allowed to negotiate our own trade deals outside of the European Union, is that successive trade secretaries, and the Trade and Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has been at the forefront of this, have been signing deals, negotiating deals with individual US states. We signed a trade deal with Florida recently. We've signed a trade deal with 7 other US states, and this is now the 8th state that we've signed a trade deal with. We can see that Texan Governor Greg Abbott, the ultimate big hat, that's what they call a big cheese in Texas, they call him a big hat. He is the governor of Texas. This is the first US state governor that's actually come to the UK to sign a trade deal with Britain. Symbolically, really, really important. There he is with Trade and Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch. They are political soulmates. The Republicans tend to dominate Texas. They're close to the Conservative Party. And this is a trade deal which should help in terms of UK exports. We already export 12 billion quid's worth of stuff to Texas every year. year. Financial and legal services, creative industries, films and so on, but particularly that energy complex that you mentioned. We're not going to be exporting any oil and gas to Texas, that's for sure, but we are exporting and trading with them in terms of expertise, energy science, particularly the hydrogen economy, which is something that Kemi Badenoch, as business secretary, is particularly interested in. So this is good news on GDP. An economic expansion is always better than an economic contraction, not least because we had a recession at the end of last year. And I think it's particularly good news when it comes to trade policy. This should give the UK economy not a huge boost, but a bit of a boost. And in this climate, Martin, that's better than nothing.
Liam Halligan, a blast of positive news, and all that money comes from out of the ground. If only we could follow, some people would say...
You're going to be humming the theme tune to Dallas in a minute, aren't you?
But if we could just do
Who shot JR?
It was Bobby. Now, the thing is, but on a serious point, £19 billion of petrochemical exports per year. Their number one export. Maybe if we drilled our own, Liam, then we wouldn't need to import so much, and we too could be rich and prosperous. That's a conversation for another time. Liam Halligan, always an absolute joy to have him in the studio. Thank you very much indeed. There's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, and we'll be discussing, are you proud to be British? And if not, are the political class and the media and the entire system, in fact, are they to blame? But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Martin. It's 4:31. I'm Sophia Wensler. Your headlines. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. At Prime Minister's Questions today, Sir Keir Starmer confronted Rishi Sunak over the remarks, pressing him to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. Andy MacDonald has had the Labour whip restored after he was cleared of breaking party rules by using a controversial slogan at a pro-Palestine rally. The MP for Middlesbrough was suspended in October after he used the phrase "from the river to the sea" during a speech at a pro-Palestine event. A Labour spokesperson said Mr MacDonald had been reminded that elected representatives must be mindful of how they use their words and how they're interpreted. A man suspected of leading a major smuggling operation in the UK and bringing hundreds of people into the country in boats and lorries has been arrested in Hampshire. The 45-year-old suspect, who is thought to be a key figure in a Kurdish organised crime group, was detained at a property in the Kingston area of Portsmouth this morning. He was arrested on suspicion of conspiring to facilitate illegal immigration and money laundering. And TikTok could be banned in the US unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to be sold or blocked with an overwhelming majority. The bill still needs to pass the Senate to become law. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. You're watching or listening to GB News. Now, let me know your thoughts on the big stories of the day. Are you proud to be British, or are you being made to feel increasingly ashamed of being British? And also, I want to know whether you think that today's political class are completely out of touch, even more so than during the Brexit days, if such a thing were possible. Are they ignoring the majority while being obsessed with minorities? gbviews@gbnews.com is the email. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Let's talk about the uphill struggle for campaigners as they're ordered to restore the Crooked Pub.
This is a lovely story. So this is
about this crooked pub.
We have a picture of this pub.
Yeah, the most crooked pub in...
No, we don't have a picture, so let's all use our imaginations.
Don't worry. I'll find it.
I'm going to tell you
it's
about
here,
this pub.
Isabel, here it is.
The thing, Scarlett, that gets me is that this pub is, it's completely flattened, completely, so nothing exists, not even the conservatory at the back or whatever it is. Awful. I have no idea, Scarlett, how they would rebuild that.
I don't know, but they have been ordered to. They flattened it. It was quite, you know, the pub burnt. It was then totally demolished without permission, and now
the reason for this was it was blocking. It was an entrance that would have blocked a new housing development or something.
It was going to stop people from making money, absolutely. And South Staffordshire Council has ordered the owners to rebuild the pub. And how they're going to rebuild it to make it look crooked, I don't know. But they should never have knocked it down in the first place. It meant something to an awful lot of people in Britain, and particularly the locals. And the locals, this came about because of a campaign.
As all the best pubs do. Do you have a favourite pub, Eamon?
Yeah, you can have pubs just for character.
Yeah,
just for character, but more than anything. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a drinker, so it wouldn't really matter. But when you go to somewhere that has got atmosphere, exactly, that is the thing. But this is so individual. I just don't know. I'm sure there are no plans of it or how it actually became lopsided or whatever. But we're all saying, well done, and stick that one up your pipe and smoke it.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 4:37. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Reform's new MP Lee Anderson will join me in the studio very soon, so don't go anywhere. He will be giving it both barrels, I guarantee it. Now, would you believe that the NHS England's non-clinical staff have increased by more than a staggering 185,000 employees, and that's just England. In the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2023, there has been an increase of 42.6% in staff numbers, a staggering increase. And this just doesn't make any sense because the NHS waiting times are continuing to quadruple while money is being poured in to pay for all these seemingly useless hirings. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the Communications Director for the Campaign for an Independent Britain, Ben Phillips. Ben, thanks for joining us in the studio. We live in a time where the NHS is treated as a church. It's been deified. And yet, when we analyse the figures, we see a different picture. We're seeing a staggering increase in numbers, a staggering increase in budget, a staggering increase in waiting times. Tell us, how did you get these figures?
Yeah, well, we're indebted to our research affiliate, Brexit Facts for EU, who produce daily reports on a whole range of issues. Up to Brexit and beyond, it was primarily over EU issues and Brexit-related issues, but increasingly we're looking at the post-Brexit agenda and including the NHS, which is obviously a vital institution for all of us, and how that money is spent given the size of the budget and the numbers of people employed. And the headline figures for the country as a whole, for the UK as a whole, is simply extraordinary. So if you're looking at non-frontline staffing figures from just a 3-year period from January 2020 to December 2023, in January 2020 we had 1,275,883 members of non-frontline staff employed, and that increased by December 2023 to 1,488,207, an extraordinary 16.6% increase, or 212,000 people.
And it's worth pointing out this doesn't include GPs, and it doesn't include non-care. So the true figure is even greater, but we don't know those numbers because they hide them.
Exactly, yes, exactly. So, and given, as I said, given the size of the budget and given the size of the NHS, the fact that we don't have the official figures is simply shocking.
And yet, the budget, 182 billion quid in 2022-23, a 6% increase year on year, every year since 2019. An extra 6 billion thrown at the NHS in the spring budget by Jeremy Hunt. We continue to hear that the NHS needs more money, and it's only 7 days from falling apart, yet it's been pumped with more money, pumped with more staff, and yet we've still got £7.7 million people, beg your pardon, on the waiting list. Doesn't that say to you that this is a system that needs total reform?
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the things we will be campaigning on. Whatever your political affiliations, we need an NHS that's fit for purpose in the 21st century, and I think the current structure is frankly beginning to fall apart, and everybody, I think, recognises that. Record waiting times again for A&E and ambulances as well just simply add to the problem, to the existing problems. And 7.8 million on the NHS waiting list at the moment is just, for England alone, just shows you the scale of the crisis.
And yet, Ben, we seem to be in a competitive sport to throw more money at the NHS. It's verboten to discuss restructuring it. Will we ever be in a position where we're able just to let the data lead this, or are we being led by the emotions, the fact that it's something that we can't touch because we're proud of it, it's the best institution in the UK, when the data seems to paint a different picture?
Well, I think if the political class were worth their money, they would have an open and honest discussion about this, because this is not a crisis across Europe. They have partly government-funded NHS and also insurance-based schemes as well. And I think we need to look at alternative schemes.
So how could that work in Britain? What, maybe people being encouraged to opt out if they're better off, to go partly private? What things could we look at?
I think you could look at tax incentives to encourage people to do so. That, that doesn't mean that they don't continue to pay tax, they do, but what it does do is alleviate pressure for those who can't afford it. And I think it encourages people to take responsibility for their own healthcare systems as well, and I think a measure of that would I think is inevitable.
And yet we're about to, by the looks of it, heading for a Labour government, but Wes Phillips seems, Wes Streeting seems more progressive. Do you think there will be an opportunity for people like Wes Streeting to discuss this more openly, or are we just tethered to this notion that the NHS is untouchable?
Well, if he is good on his word, then we need to take him at his word and follow him very, very closely. This government should have been a lot bolder and a lot more honest about it during its 14 years in power. Let's hope that Wes Streeting and the Labour Party can be honest and do something about it.
Great conversation. Thank you for joining us in the studio. That was Ben Phillips from the comms director for the Campaign for an Independent Britain. Thank you very much for joining us. Superb. Now, you are watching or listening to GB News. Plenty more to bring you in just a moment. Should we feel proud to be British? Well, we'll be continuing this debate next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with Dry and bright conditions across much of the east. Just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers, though, for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures. It could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere, again, still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Brand new Sundays from 6 p.m. The Neil Oliver Show.
It's absolutely vital that people are given the opportunity to take part in the debate, to say the things that matter to them, to be challenged. A country is only really a shared dream. As long as enough people have a shared idea of what it is, then that country exists. What GB News does is give voices somewhere they can be heard.
The Neil Oliver Show. Sundays from 6 p.m. on GB News.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:47. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, what emotions are instilled in you when you see the Union flag? Does it make you feel proud to be British, or are you filled with guilt about colonial history? Well, today, Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson says there is unspoken grief across the nation and that people feel scared to be proud to be British these days. This, of course, comes after that man, Lee Anderson, declared he wants his country back when announcing his defection to Reform UK from the Conservatives earlier this week. Well, I have that man, Lee Anderson, in the studio in about 20 minutes. But before that, let's discuss this further with human rights campaigner and activist Peter Tatchell. Peter, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. Peter, what would you say to people like Lee Anderson when they say, I want my country back?
Well, of course, no one's taken our country away from us. You know, we, the British people, are in control. And the campaigners for Brexit promised that when Brexit was done, we would have control. Quite clearly, that has not happened. In fact, all the problems they highlighted have actually got worse since Brexit. So I don't know what the fuss is. I mean, the real issue about taking control is that corporate greed is ruining this country. Privatized companies and private corporations are fleecing the public with hiked prices, poorer service, and yet we are all expected as taxpayers to foot the bill. It is so unfair. There are 171 billionaires in Britain. 171, their combined personal wealth is over £700 billion. they could easily afford to pay 1% tax a year to help the public finances, but they're refusing to do so because they're not patriotic and they're too greedy.
OK, Peter, so you've blamed Brexit, you've blamed big business and you've blamed billionaires. But a lot of people would say what's changed about Britain are other things, such as, for example, uncontrolled immigration, a denigration of our national values, a teaching of our history as one-sided and wholly negative, shame around our colonial heritage, while failing to recognise the issues of tolerance and pride. Values, Peter, which you as a campaigner around LGBTQ issues have been campaigning around for years, Britain being a warm, welcoming, inclusive nation.
Well, I think we still are. And I support those British values. You know, I think we've got a lot to be proud of. Our democratic traditions are the envy of many countries in the world. But, you know, it doesn't mean to say that everything's perfect. And I want to see things fixed. I want to see us have a better country for everybody, that everybody's got a place in it, and that it's a fair country. At the moment, we're not fair when we have over 1 million people dependent on food banks. You can't blame asylum seekers or small boats on that. They're not the ones who have caused the economic crisis. The economic crisis is because we've had a government which has mismanaged the economy for 14 years. We have a government that's given tax breaks to the very rich while further penalising with taxes ordinary people. It's just not fair. That's what we have to change.
Peter, what would you say to those who may put the argument forward that we used to bow before the Union flag, we used to worship the Union flag, that flag has been replaced by the Pride flag? That's a flag now which seems to instill a sense of you must take the knee to it, you must eschew those values. Isn't that part of the issue? We've become a nation divided.
Well, there's no compulsion for anyone to salute the Pride flag. It's there for those who want to support the LGBT plus community, which I think is the majority of people in this country. You know, the British flag, the Union flag, it does have a bloody history. We have to face up to the fact of the terrible things that were done under slavery, under colonialism, in the name of the Union Jack. But that is the past, and we do need to move on, but not erase the past, not forget what was done, but then not, as you say, be one-sided. You know, there are two sides. There's a good side and there's a bad side. I want to celebrate the good things. You know, I love the NHS. It's imperfect, but it does a great job. It is the envy of countries around the world. We need to make it better. I agree. But, you know, I think this polarization, either you're for or against the Union Jack, for or against our colonial history, it's not as simple as that. There are shades of grey. And, you know, when Britain, you know, colonized a third of the world, some very good things were done, some very bad things were done. Among other things, we exported all our homophobic laws to these other countries. Among other things, we often suppressed violently entirely peaceful protests by people in India and other countries who wanted to govern themselves. That's nothing to be proud of, but there are things to be proud of. You know, look at all the great British scientists, doctors, engineers, artists, painters. You know, we've got an incredible history to be very, very proud of.
Good. On that, we can agree. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today, Peter Tatchell. Now, I've been asking you for your opinions on this issue throughout the show. Let's read a few of those emails out quickly. On the topic of are you proud to be British? Neil says this: I'm totally depressed at the state of this country. National and local government is worse than ever. And my only slight glimmer of hope is that the Reform Party and people like Lee Anderson can change this. The next 5 years, however, might be grim. We'll have Lee Anderson in about 5 minutes' time to go over that. Tony quickly says this: I'm only ashamed of where our country is now. I want us to go back to where we were. Resourceful, stiff upper lip, keeping calm and never taking ourselves too seriously. A happy, united kingdom. Bob quickly says this: tell me what's left to be proud of. Floods of illegals coming in, vaccine deaths, NHS debts, Archbishop corruption, GM foods approved by King Charles, even though he won't eat it himself. Wow, Bob goes on on and on. He really is in a bit of a bad place. We're going to have more positive news on that after this. We've got Lee Anderson coming up, as I say. Now, lots of you again in touch with your thoughts on all those big stories of the day. We'll have much, much more of that. Lee Anderson started this debate when he said, I want my country back. Do you agree with him? What does that even mean? What do you want back? What do you miss? What should we do going forward? That's the big debate we're going to have after the break. You're watching or listening to GB News. As I keep saying, Lee Anderson is coming up, joining us in the studio. He wants his country back, but on the party he was elected with in 2019 to blame for so many of the issues we face in this country. I'll be putting this to him next. I'm Martin Daubney on Britain's News Channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with dry and bright conditions across much of the east. Just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers, though, for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures. It could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere, again, still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got cash, treats and a spring shopping spree to be won in a great British giveaway. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Coming up in a few minutes' time, I'll be speaking to Lee Anderson after he dropped a political bombshell this week by defecting from the Tories to Reform UK. I'll quiz him about his first week sitting as an opposition MP. Does he regret jumping ship? And exactly what did he mean when he said, "I want my country back"? He'll be in the studio in a few moments' time. Next, GB News understands that the UK is to ban foreign governments from owning British newspapers, and that would effectively block the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, bid to take over the Daily Telegraph. And puberty blockers will no longer be available for children on the NHS in England. We'll be speaking to a trans woman on what their take is on this story, on this ban that Britain leads the way across the world. And that's all coming up in your next hour. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining me on the show. It's always an absolute pleasure to have your company. When Lee Anderson said, "I want my country back," did you agree with him? And if so, what does that mean? Who's taken our country? Where has it gone? Do you feel that our once proud values, our proud flag, are now little more than shorthand for racism, for being the scourge of the world, where we used to feel like we were the envy of the world? Or is this all kind of historic revisionism, little England mentality? Or has the fabric of the nation changed in ways that are very, very perceptible to you? Let us know your thoughts. I've already had hundreds and hundreds of comments on this. I'll make sure I read out a few before the end of the show. Please get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.com. I'll read out all of the best comments. Your comments are always much, much appreciated. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Martin. It's 2 minutes past 5. I'm Sophia Wensler. Your top story this hour. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Sir Keir Starmer has confronted the Prime Minister over the remarks, pressing Rishi Sunak to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. In today's Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader asked whether Rishi Sunak was proud to be supported by someone making such offensive statements.
2 weeks ago, he marched them out like fools to defend Islamophobia, and now the member for Ashfield is warming up the opposition benches for them. He won't hand the money back. He won't comment on how convenient it is that a man handed huge NHS contracts by his government is now his party's biggest donor. You have to wonder what the point is of a Prime Minister who can't lead and a party that can't govern.
Prime Minister acknowledged Frank Hester's comments were wrong and racist, but declined to say his donations would be returned, instead calling out what he said were double standards in the Labour Party.
I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from
I'm somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
In other news, the Defence Secretary has warned Vladimir Putin to stop sabre-rattling over nuclear war. It comes as the Russian president warns that any US troops who venture to Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, Putin said that while Moscow is technically prepared for nuclear war, the country is not rushing into it. Grant Shapps spoke exclusively to GB News during a visit to Poland to see UK troops taking part in NATO exercises. He said the only way forward for Russia is to pull out of Ukraine.
It needs to stop sabre-rattling. It's irresponsible to talk like that, particularly about nuclear weapons. There is no threat to the Russian state. The threat, I'm afraid, is to Ukraine and to countries like Poland that are in here to the west of them, because Putin has invaded a democratic, free society, and he needs to pull out, and then there's no issue whatsoever.
Now, Andy MacDonald has had the Labour whip restored after he was cleared of breaking party rules by using a controversial slogan at a pro-Palestine rally. The MP for Middlesbrough was suspended in October after he used the phrase "from the river to the sea" during a speech at a pro-Palestine event. The words refer to the land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, which many find offensive because it appears to refer to all of Israel. A Labour spokesperson said Mr MacDonald had been reminded that elected representatives must be mindful of how their words are interpreted. And a major people smuggling operation has been intercepted in the UK with the arrest of a suspected high-level figure in a Kurdish organised crime group. The authorities believe he's significantly involved in smuggling people to Britain in boats and in the back of lorries. Officers from the National Crime Agency were supported by Hampshire Police as they detained the 45-year-old at a property in the Kingston area of Portsmouth this morning. He was arrested on suspicion of conspiring to facilitate illegal immigration and money laundering and is now in custody. And TikTok could be banned in the US unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to be sold or blocked with an overwhelming majority. The bill still needs to pass the Senate to become law. President Joe Biden has indicated that he would sign it. However, his Republican challenger Donald Trump recently signalled that he'd oppose the ban. Here in the UK, TikTok hasn't been banned before, but it was blocked from government devices in 2023 over data privacy concerns. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Martin.
Now to our top story. It was a political bombshell which saw the defection of the Tory MP for Ashfield to Reform UK. That man, Lee Anderson, had been suspended as a Conservative MP following comments he made about the Mayor of London being controlled by Islamists, of course, made on this very show a couple of Fridays ago. Yesterday, we saw him sacked on the opposition benches for the first time. You can see him highlighted there, sat next to a certain Mr. George Galloway without his hat, the controversial Workers' Party of Britain MP. Well, Lee Anderson joins me now in the studio, as well as GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Shall we start, Chris, with a quick roundup of today's PMQs? I put a message out on social media that I felt that PMQs today was totally and utterly out of touch with the man and woman in the street, obsessed with calling out which party is the most racist, obsessed with calling for ceasefires in Gaza, the SNP's opening gambit, wishing British Muslims happy Ramadan. Meanwhile, people looking on just thinking, what about me? What about the majority of Britain, instead of obsessing with minority interests?
Yeah, it was pretty edifying, I thought. The problem is the Tory party has got wrapped up in this row about Frank Hester's £10 million, the comments he was recorded making, according to The Guardian, in 2019 about Diane Abbott, and now Number 10 say that was racist. And of course, it's always going to be in an election year, when will the party return the money? The Labour sees a chance here to get a real bite out of the revenues of the party. £10 million is about a quarter of the amount they raise annually, so £10 million is a real issue. And of course, they're never going to do it, I doubt. So they still want to try and challenge them over it. Here the PM, Rishi Sunak, remind viewers of our channel and MPs that Angela Rayner called Tories scum. David Lammy used the word Nazi in the past. And John McDonnell, the former Shadow Chancellor, said that Esther McVeigh should be lynched. This is not language we should have any kind of, really a sort of normal run-of-the-mill in politics. So I think it was pretty unedifying. I thought the best bit of it, the most interesting bit, was when Labour went after the Tories on a plan to get rid of the national insurance, and that would cost £46 billion. And how will that be costed? That is the beginning of an attempt by Labour to change the subject from their plans onto Tory plans and making them uncosted. So that was a bit of interesting politics. The rest of it, though, we could move on pretty quickly from.
Lee Anderson, let's bring you in at this point. There's a big hoo-ha, the opening gambit from Keir Starmer today about this new latest racism row. Rishi Sunak said, nothing really to see here. He's apologised and he's all right. You, however, were accused of making racist comments and you got the boot. What's the difference?
Well, let's be clear, Martin. I think it actually happened in this studio a few weeks back. I think that's when this leg of my journey started. I didn't make any racist comments, let's be clear on that, or any reference to Mayor Khan's race or religion at all. But you know what? I haven't got 10 million quid lying about in the bank. And this chap who's made these alleged racist comments, I mean, I don't know if he has or not, but it's been reported in The Guardian. He's made these comments. He's got a few quid which are donated to the party, and I think a lot of people out there would be asking now for consistency. You know, if you're going to have one bloke say some nasty things, which they were quite nasty, then surely you should use the same sort of discipline, if you like. I mean, I lost the whip. And he's apologised and just moved on.
But you did refer to the mayor's race and his religion, didn't you? You said Muslim extremism was taken.
Muslims not. Islamism. It's not a race, Chopper. We've had this conversation many times. I'm surprised that you're bringing this up once again. Islam is not a race. So there's nothing I said in my speech in this very studio that was racist.
Let's get on to that comment you made, your opening line at the Reform press conference. I want my country back. What do you mean by that?
It could mean lots of things, Martin, but, I always harp onto my past growing up in the 1970s and 80s. Obviously, Chopper, it would have been the 50s and 60s, maybe late 40s, not sure about that. But I want to go back to a time where, you could get a school place. You could go to school and not be told you're a different sex to everybody else. I want to go back to a place where you could ring the doctor up at 8 o'clock in the morning and get an appointment that day. I want to go back to a place where you could ring the dentist up and have that dodgy tooth pulled out the same day without waiting for 3 weeks in agony and then going to buy a pair of pliers. I don't want to see 25 different types of toilets in buildings for different genders. There's all these sorts of things. I want to be able to drive down the roads in Ashfield.
So why leave the party of government? If that's what you want, stay in the government and make it happen. Instead, you've legged it. And now you're shouting from the sidelines.
Here we go again, Chopper. This is gutter journalism again. This is not right what you're saying. You know that. I left the party, had the whip taken off me. I refused to apologise. I stood on the principle that I would not apologise and go back to the party because, like we see, inconsistencies again with this donor. 10 million quid is give the party. Fair enough, but you've got to be consistent because if you're not consistent, then people don't trust you.
Well, talking of being consistent, you said the reason why you left was George Galloway's election in Rochdale. You shook his hand.
That was part of it. That was part of it.
You shook his hand on the green benches.
There was a few things last week, Chopper, that just added a little bit more into the pot. I was 90% there. But George Galloway, I shook his hand yesterday in the chamber. I think you should do, even if you disagree fundamentally on everything. At the end of the day, you're colleagues, and you should be able to talk to each other, have a pint after work, and and be respectful. But I think the budget last week as well was a tipping point for me. Like Martin said, the opening gambit was we want to spend £1 million on this memorial. Nothing wrong with having memorials, and then they referred to I think it was Saj, the member for, I think it's Bromsgrove, and he was one of these people that called me out of being a racist. So that I was down in the dumps. I was sat with my colleagues on the Conservative benches. You know, I had a bit of a kicking, a bit of a pasting politically. And then to do that in the opening line of the budget was like, you're down there, let's kick you again.
And Jeremy Hunt wanted you to apologise, didn't he? Say sorry, as James Cleverly did.
Well, they should be apologising to me, and they should be apologising to the membership in the Conservative Party, and lots of councils up and down the country who are furious about what's going to happen in the May elections.
All right, so let's get away from what your critics have been saying. What's the reaction been from the Reform membership? We understand they've had a couple of thousand people coughed up £30-odd a pop, so 60 grand in the pot. They're calling out the Lee Anderson effect. What are people saying to you, and what's your role moving forward now? Are you going to be going on like a Red Wall roadshow? Is it your job to whip up the vote for the Reform Party across the Red Wall? Is that your role?
Well, I can't give too much away at the moment, Martin, but there will be a significant campaign. You know, my job's obviously I'm in the Red Wall. I'm a typical Red Wall seat, so I think that's the sort of demographics we'll be going for. People in this country, people like I bang on about my parents all the time, and it's just people of their generation. They're actually fed up. They've seen the changes over the years in this country. They see mass immigration, which has affected all our public services. It's affected our very social fabric, our way of life. And people feel let down. They feel like, and I said it before, we've given our country away. We've given it away, and actually in some parts of the country, we've given it away to groups of people who just don't like us.
A lot of people are going to say, of course, Lee, that you'll be giving your country away to Sir Keir Starmer. You'll be splitting the Conservative vote. In fact, that's something that you said before about the Reform Party. Be careful what you wish for. They were your precise words. And now, you might be a part of that issue. Sir Keir Starmer might get in because you'll be taking votes away from the Conservative Party.
So what we have to do now, Martin,
the
as a politician, you do play politics sometimes. What we have to do, we have to trust the British public. It's not up to Reform if Labour get in. It's up to the British public. They've got a decision to make now. We've got the general election, maybe May, maybe November. If we get our message across, and I think it's, the message I want my country back is resonating with people all over the UK, it's up to the British public. That's democracy. And I seriously think we're going to win a serious amount of seats at this next election, because my inbox, my social media, even my mailbag, people actually writing letters and sending cards to me, wishing me all the best, which is great.
I've got one quick question before we have to leave it there. There's been talk of another 9 in the wings. Can you confirm that? And are any of them going to follow suit? Because you were like a natural spiritual leader of the blue-collar Conservatives, and a lot of people in that party looked up to you. Are they going to be following your journey?
That's not for me to say, Martin. If colleagues of mine want to follow, my door is open. They've got my number. I am in touch with a lot of my colleagues, just pleasantries really, asking me how I'm going. Quite a few's reached out to me. Some that I never thought would reach out to me since I left, but they've been good. They've been pretty good.
OK, Chris, have a quick blast.
Quick question. Do you want Nigel Farage to become back in a big role, lead the party maybe? That's the end. That's the icing on the cake for you.
What we saw when I joined, I think it was 2,000 members. You reported on this, Chopper, earlier. There was 2,000 members signed up within 48 hours, and that's just for little old me. Now, if Nigel decided he was going to stand somewhere, imagine that you'd have 10, 20, 30,000 people. So I know it was a great asset to the party. He's been probably the most influential politician over the past 25, 30 years, and I think the country would welcome him with open arms.
And you want him back?
Of course I do.
All right. Thank you, Leanna. So we have to leave it there. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Cheers. So, Chris, lots to chew over there. He's being tight-lipped with the other people, but, you and I both know that there are swoops, there are wagons circling, and, where Lee Anderson goes, surely others are bound to follow.
They're all denying it, of course, when I approach them, and it may be harder for the 9 MPs we're thinking about, can't name on air, because they have to go straight from the Tory party to the Reform UK. Lee was in a kind of purgatory position when he was held as an independent, because he lost his whip over that Islamist remarks you referred to earlier. So I think it's really interesting. I think Richard Tice is certainly very clear. He's talking to MPs. He thinks more will come across. OK, well, you can get lots more of that story on our website, and thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got breaking news and all the brilliant analysis you've come to expect from GB News.
News. Now, it's now time for our second guest of this hour. Marcus Fish joins us in the studio. You may have heard what Lee Anderson had to say there, just still blasting both barrels. He felt let down by the Conservative Party. He feels there have been clear double standards. Rishi Sunak was apologising for the donors' remarks, but nothing to see here, let's move on. And Lee Anderson blatantly saying there the difference is 10 million quid.
Well, look, I called out the remarks for being racist, which they clearly were. And I said yesterday, and I still say the same, that I stand with anybody who is subject to such awful remarks, that those are not acceptable in any way. And I wanted a much stronger condemnation of them. And so I sided with Diane Abbott yesterday, and that is where I still am on that issue.
One thing that came out today, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of comments, Marcus, about PMQs today, was an obsession with minority interests, seemed to grasp the House. Parties trying to outdo each other on which party is the most racist this week. The SNP's opening gambit was Happy Ramadan. Labour Party once again calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And I've got to say to you, people are starting to think that the chamber is completely devoid from reality. People are saying, what planet are parliamentarians on? Why are you so obsessed with minority interests when the majority just want things like immigration to come down to take back control of our country?
Well, look, I would agree with the country that we need to just take the temperature down on all of these things. Britain's not a racist country, and nor should it be. I'm 100% behind having a diverse and a vibrant place, and us being a friendly place for everybody to sort of come and visit and live, and that's a really important part of who we are as a tolerant nation. I would say, yeah, look, it's part of taking that temperature down is about taking the heat out of some of these arguments. They are the whole point of Parliament is to be a place which is a calm place where people can come as their representatives of their communities to talk in a dispassionate way about the best way to get from A to B. And it doesn't help to have these identity politics. I don't care if you're white, black, purple, whatever. Makes no difference to me. Shouldn't make a difference to most people up and down the country, and that's exactly how it should be. And I'd like to see that be the sort of watchword as we go forward.
You'd like that, but it's not going to be, is it? Because of social media, that's what drives this kind of tension. And what we're describing actually is often generated, isn't it, by social media. And I wonder whether any law, any new definition of extremism, we'll see tomorrow from Michael Gove, I wonder whether that actually will work or even have any effect.
Well, I am a big supporter of trying to hold the big media companies to account on these issues. The algorithms that they use on social media that drive engagement, drive the sort of dopamine hit of someone saying something that gets loads of likes. It just drives people down these sort of polarised directions that makes it very hard to have these civil conversations that we need to be having.
It might be better if politicians stop living in the Twitter sphere and start living in the real world, because, you know, the Twitter sphere is obsessed with identity politics, with racism in a box of cornflakes. In the real world, people are concerned about taxes, the highest since World War II, still, despite the budget. They're concerned about immigration. And I just wondered, to repeat my question finally, Marcus, you know, when can we just start to see an end to this obsession with identity politics and actually getting back to the politics that people really, really care about, the pounds in their pocket, you know, the immigration into the country, you know, getting back to basics.
Yeah, everybody, whatever colour, wants to know how they're going to get themselves and their families, the people that they care about, from A to B. How are they going to be able to grow their incomes, grow their opportunities to be able to afford the house they want to live in, the community they want to see around them? These are the things that I want to see the government and the Prime Minister setting out the vision for, because it's all very well. I obviously welcome tax cuts, and that is the plan, but we need to communicate that in a way where people feel confident, which is the truth, that the Conservative Party is the only way that we're going to achieve that in this country.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. Marcus Fish, of course, the Conservative MP for Yeovil, and Chris Hope, thank you. Always a pleasure. Now, you're watching or listening to GB News. Coming up, the UK economy is climbing again. Hurrah! But what does that mean for the pound in your pocket and interest rates? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind, for which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head. But he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. 5:26 is your time. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has signed what is being called a landmark deal with the Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. Called the Texas Trade Agreement, it's a major post-Brexit trade pact with the 8th largest economy in the entire world. That's what Texas is. And the Texas Governor, Greg Abbott, says it is crucial for the UK and the US's economies to prosper. Now, that is a kind of positive news we need. And next is a positive man to talk about it, because I'm joined in studio by Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor with On the Money. Liam, always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Two blasts of positive news. First, Texas, but before that, GDP is back up. Good news.
It is worth marking this. I'm about to tell you news about a piece of data that was released this morning, but it's an important piece of data. It's gross domestic product, the overall size of the UK economy, the sum of all the goods and services produced in the economy. because, of course, we were in recession in the back end of last year. That means the economy is getting smaller, which affects all of us. The signs now are, Martin, that at the turn of the year, in January, the economy actually started growing again. That's good news. Let's quickly whip through this so we can get on to the big hat news about JR and Texas and all the rest of it. So GDP growth, here it is. We know that between July and September last year, GDP actually shrunk. It had contracted slightly by 0.1%. In October to December last year, compared to the same period in 2022, it shrank again by 0.3%. That's your recession, Martin. That's your 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction or shrinkage. But the Office for National Statistics this morning confirmed on a preliminary basis, this is preliminary data, that in January the economy actually grew compared to January 2023, 0.2%. This is by no means an economic boom. This is not the sunlit uplands. There's no chance of the economy overheating, but we are growing. And if that growth continues across the first quarter, January, February, March, then we will be officially out of recession. We've got an interest rate decision next Thursday, 21st of March. This, on balance, makes it less likely that the Bank of England will cut interest rates from 5.25%, where they currently are. Lots of information. The Monetary Policy Committee, those 9 economists at the Bank of England, they are processing lots and lots and lots before next Thursday. On balance, this makes it less likely they will cut because, Martin, they see the economy is growing again, so they won't worry as much about their refusal to lower interest rates trashing commerce. That's basically how it works.
Yeah, now let's move on to this Texas deal. Precisely the sort of nimble, sexy idea we were promised in a post-Brexit Britain. And the numbers involved, Texas is an astonishing, it's a massive economy, Lee.
It is just one of the 50-odd US states, of course, but it is the second biggest of the US states after California. The Texan economy is worth £1.9 trillion, equivalent 1,900 billion, and each billion is 1,000 million. These are very big numbers. So the Texan economy, as you say, it's bigger than Italy, it's bigger than Russia, it is the 8th biggest economy in the world. The UK economy is 2.2 trillion, so only slightly behind the UK economy. We don't have a trade deal with the US as a whole, nor does the European Union. It's been trying for 40-odd years. The US doesn't tend to sign many trade deals because it is so powerful, it likes to call the shots. So what we've been doing since Brexit, since we left the European Union, since we've had that permission now, that legal right to cut our own trade deals as a sovereign nation rather than as part of the EU bloc, successive British trade and business secretaries have been cutting deals with individual American states in a kind of eat the elephant in pieces approach, and Texas is the biggest by far that we've done. Now, not only did we sign the trade deal, there's Kemi Badenoch there, the Business and Trade Secretary, in Downing Street this afternoon with Governor Greg Abbott. He is the ultimate Texas big hat, as they call them. He is the governor of Texas, very much a sort of political soulmate of the Conservative Party. Texas, a Republican state traditionally. He and Kemi Badenoch have been talking for a long time about this trade deal. It's not very likely the Conservatives are going to sign a trade deal with California, for instance, which more is a Democrat state. Californian economy, $3 trillion compared to $2.2 trillion.
Huge numbers.
In the UK. I think it'd be the world's 4th biggest economy, 5th biggest economy in and of itself, one single state. So what does this trade deal mean? It's not only a nice photo op for the Business and Trade Secretary there, it means you're likely to get a lot more trade between the UK and not just Texas, but the other 7 states, including Florida, another big state with which we've signed trade deals. Texas in particular, it's well known for oil and gas, it's well known for financial services, it's well known for legal services, academics. They've got very, very good universities in Texas. There will be more trade. We export about 12 billion quid's worth of exports a year to Texas, as the UK. That's quite a lot. That's likely to go up in those fields: financial services, petrochemicals, legal services, education. Also, Kemi Badenoch made a point of mentioning hydrogen, the hydrogen economy. This is an aspect of our energy policy that's remarkably underdeveloped, in my view. Hydrogen is a very interesting source of energy, not without controversy, of course. It's highly explosive, but then again, so are oil and gas. So in Texas, they're doing a lot of work on the hydrogen economy. We can expect a lot more trade, collaboration, and jobs in the UK in that space. because of this trade deal, because of that photo op that we just saw.
Great stuff, Liam Halligan, rebuilding the special relationship one state at a time. Love it. Thank you very much. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including the NHS in England has banned the use of puberty blockers for children. I'm going to get the view on that from a trans woman. But before that, it's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Martin. It's 5:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Mr Hester says he's deeply sorry for the remarks. The Defence Secretary has warned Vladimir Putin to stop sabre-rattling over nuclear war. It comes as the Russian president warns that any US troops who venture to Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, Putin said that while Moscow is technically prepared for nuclear war, the country is not rushing into it. Grant Shapps told GB News that the only way forward for Russia is to pull out of Ukraine. Andy MacDonald has had the Labour whip restored after he was cleared of breaking party rules by using a controversial slogan at a pro-Palestine rally. The MP for Middlesbrough was suspended in October after he used the phrase "from the river to the sea" during a speech at a pro-Palestine event. A Labour spokesperson said Mr MacDonald had been reminded that elected representatives must be mindful of how their words are interpreted. And TikTok could be banned in the US unless the app's Chinese owners sell its American operation. The House of Representatives voted to pass a bill that would require the social media company to be sold or blocked with an overwhelming majority. The bill still needs to pass the Senate to become law. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For a valuable legacy your family can own, gold coins will always shine bright. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2810 and €1.1685. The price of gold is £1,701 and 20 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's closed the day at 7,772 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
That's my favourite time of the show. I'm now joined by Michelle Dewberry, of course, the queen of primetime politics. 6 till 7, Jubes and Co. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Hello to you, Martin. Well, of course, I want to talk about all the things that you would expect us to be doing. I want to, of course, look at this race round now, this 10 million quid, should it be going back or not? But also, Diane Abbott, Harriet Harman says it's time that she should be now back into the Labour fold. Is it or not? Also, as well, I know you're coming on in a second to talk about the puberty blocker story, which, of course, I'll look at too. But also, interestingly, today, a school in Wales, Martin, had its first puberty party. This is a party aimed at 12 and 13-year-olds to celebrate their journey from childhood into adulthood. This was organised on the advice of external agencies. And I'm really intrigued as to what people actually think about this kind of stuff. Is it indeed what schools should be focusing on? Who are these external agencies? Is it all a little bit weird, or is it just a great so-called safe environment for these kids to explore this stuff? There's different views on that one on my panel, I can tell you. So yeah, those stories and much more, Martin, for me.
I've got to say, Michelle, I think these kind of things in schools are a bit weird, and I think we need a full audit of who is going into our schools. Michelle Dewberry, 6 till 7, Jubes and Co. It's going to be magnificent. Now, you're watching or listening to GB News, and last chance to let me know your thoughts on the big stories of the day. I want to know whether you think that the political class are completely and out of touch. Are they ignoring the majority while being obsessed with minority issues? gbviews@gbnews.com is the email. Get these into me ASAP. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right. We all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful. But what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse. That is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they commit a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay. They show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason. But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you earn it, you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you no, it's easy. If it's
that's
easy,
an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:40. We're on the final furlong and you're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, puberty blockers will no longer be available for children on the NHS in England. The puberty-suppressing hormones are used to pause the onset of physical changes such as breast development and facial hair in children who have gender dysphoria. The NHS England has banned the prescription of such drugs for children at gender identity clinics, and the move has been welcomed by the government. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the Diversity and Inclusion Facilitator, Katie John Went. Katie, welcome to the show. So this move to ban puberty blockers going to children is being heralded as a much overdue dollop of common sense. What's your take?
Well, I thought the timing of it was interesting coming out yesterday, which was actually kind of de-transition awareness day. But actually the ending of the giving out of puberty blockers was already signalled in 2022 after the CAS review. But they actually said that the evidence base wasn't big enough to actually say yes or no to it. And then in June 23, the NHS actually said that they would only give out puberty blockers as part of clinical research. And that actually hasn't changed. Puberty blockers can still be given out on the NHS, but only with accompanying accurate research as part of a programme. And the NHS actually 10 years ago did do research on it, but the research had its own difficulties. And that's been one of the problems. We do not know what the outcomes are and what the outcomes would be if you weren't on them. And just hearing that in the previous clip about the idea of a puberty party, whatever it was, in Wales, aimed at 12 to 13-year-olds, well, that is a stupid idea, if you ask me, because there are people who have precocious puberty from age 5 through 9, and they go on puberty blockers to stop them getting their puberty too early. And there's someone like me who didn't get a male puberty until I was 18 because I had the opposite problem, a delayed onset puberty. And I was under doctors for 7 years because my male puberty didn't arrive. And so what used to be a puberty party for me, we'd be people out of time, and it would be incredibly kind of stigmatizing to those who hadn't got puberty.
Katie, John, as well as the notion that this is long overdue, I mean, Elon Musk was tweeting this yesterday as a sign that Britain is leading the way in what he sees as a runaway surge towards the prescription of hormones to children who maybe don't know they're in control of their full faculties. But could there be something else at play here? Do you think, as many do, there could be a huge legal case coming down the line of people being prescribed hormones and then later regretting it? And if it was the NHS that gave them to them, could they have a case against the country? And that could be incredibly expensive.
Well, yes. I mean, this is an issue. I mean, the UK, I wouldn't say is leading the way. 3 or 4 countries got there ahead of us on it, and so it's not just us, 2 countries in Scandinavia alone, but others have also been kind of putting the brake back on puberty blockers and recognizing that we all rushed ahead on a protocol that was developed actually primarily by 2 women, an endocrinologist and a psychologist in the Netherlands in the 1990s. And no one has really kind of fully queried it, and we're querying it now. And one of the dilemmas was the fact that nearly 100%, like 96 to 98% of people who go on puberty blockers always go on to cross-sex hormones, always transition all the way and have surgery, etc. In other words, taking puberty blockers isn't the promise that was given, which was this is a way to pause, to take time out, to reconsider, am I trans or not? Because everybody who goes on them becomes trans. So it's kind of like a fait accompli going on them. What they perhaps should have done is said, yes, you can go on puberty blockers for 6 months to 1 year. And at that stage, it probably is reversible for 6 months, but it ain't reversible if you're on it for 5 years. But if you go on for, say, 6 months, pause, come back, you have multiple therapy appointments during that time, and then you have to come off them to let puberty kick in again, and then to ascertain whether you really are trans, whether you're actually gay, which many of them do turn out to be. And the level of desistance then would be issued. But yeah, there are a lot of cases that could potentially come up, legal cases against, because in fact, the original Dutch studies and Dutch clinics were actually one of them was actually co-funded by one of the drug companies as well, which is difficult.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We're simply out of time. Thank you for joining us, Katie, John, Went. Now it's time now for the latest Great British Giveaway, and your chance to win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats. And here's how all of that could be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with Dry and bright conditions across much of the east, just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers though for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures, it could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere again still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Earlier on breakfast.
Welcome to the programme. Leading for us this morning, what took so long? Pressure on the PM as another Tory racism row has emerged.
I think it was very disappointing that I was one of the only voices yesterday morning to come straight off the bat and say this was a racist comment.
Nobody wanted to listen because it was the post office, this trusted brand that was in every local shop and served the community.
And there's no danger in sleeping your baby on his or her back either. So do it, and you severely reduce the risk of cot death happening to you.
It's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 5:50. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, to pee or not to pee? That is the question, because the council in Hertfordshire has become embroiled in a wild wee row after it emerged. The council has been fining people for urinating in a lay-by when they get caught short. The Coreham Borough Council claims it is cracking down on what it calls unpleasant behaviour, like weeing by the side of the road, which it says is a form of littering. However, some legal experts have questioned the definition, and critics have accused the council of simply, once again, using drivers as cash cows. Well, I can now speak with the founder of Clean Up Britain, John Reid. John, welcome to the show. Now, I know for a damn sure as mustard you absolutely detest littering by roadsides. In fact, you've taken the Highways Authority to court on this matter. But the big question in this case, first of all, is having a wee and a lay-by littering, yes or no?
No, Martin. As you say, there isn't anyone who detests littering more than me, I don't, or very few people. But what I would say is that littering is something that, litter is something that visibly disfigures and scars the environment. And although obviously weeing by the side of the road is a pretty antisocial thing, and I don't dispute that for a second, I would not actually say it is littering.
Right, so the next point here, there's been an astonishing 39,000% increase in just 2 years of fixed penalty notices, 88 quid a pop, 776 people getting fined in one lay-by on the A41. And can you believe it, John? Council officials are actually, hiding in the bushes and filming people?
Yeah, I'm not really laughing, but yeah, what a job, hiding in the bushes, filming people doing that. But anyway, look, I think we can say, unfortunately, littering as an offence is sort of symptomatic of deeper problems in society about lack of respect and lack of pride. And that's what we at Clean Up Britain are all concerned about ensuring that our country doesn't become any more littered and fly tipped than it already is. We've got an epidemic of fly tipping and litter in this country, and our campaign is about trying to reverse that epidemic. And just to repeat the point, I wouldn't say that peeing in a bush is littering. As I say, yeah, sure, it can be described as antisocial, but it isn't. I mean, if I look, for instance, at the Cambridge, no less, the Cambridge-Oxford Dictionary, it describes littering as small pieces of rubbish that have been left lying on the ground in public places. So that's what the dictionary says, maybe the foremost one in this country. So I'm quite happy to go with what they reckon.
Yeah, John, I think you're right. A small piece of litter which people don't like might involve fixed penalty notices, landing on your doormat simply for when you're caught short. And don't forget the councils are closing all the toilets anyway. John Reid, thank you very much for joining us, founder of Clean Up Britain. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, I've been asking you the entire show, are you proud to be British? I want to read out a few of these emails now. Glenda says this: the rabble are running our country. We have stealing from shops, demonstrations every weekend with flag-waving troublemakers. Just Stop Oil, weak law and order, and hardly any justice, poor education, and the soaring price of energy. Am I proud to be British? No. Roger says this: yes, I am definitely proud to be British, and I'm proud of my history and of my country. Brian adds this: I'm embarrassed that we bow to the woke. What happened to the leaders of the world? We are scared to make a decision in case we upset someone, anyone. Our ancestors would be turning in their graves. And Robert adds this: finally, Britain has brought more to the world than any other country. We should enjoy everything about our nation. Thanks for all of those comments. I had hundreds and hundreds of them, simply don't have enough time to read them all out. Now, after this is Jubes & Co, 6 till 7. I've just seen that man Nigel Farage, Hove interview out there. He, of course, is here 7 till 8. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6, but just get in touch tomorrow. But before that, it's time for your weather forecast, the most important the show, with Alex Deacon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will see some rain at some point tomorrow, but the driest and mildest weather will be in the east. We've had a bit of a three-way split today with this weather front dissecting the country, mostly dry and mild to the south, a few showers and very windy to the far north, and under that weather front, pretty dull and damp, still producing some heavy rain across the mountains of North Wales and northwest England. That'll track back northwards overnight, so turning damp once more tonight over Northern Ireland, and eventually the rain returns to southern Scotland. Much of central and northern Scotland dry and clear and quite chilly. Further south, it is a very mild night, 9 or 10 at the low. We'll start Thursday then with a lot of cloud and rain for Wales, parts of northwest England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. All that rain will slowly drift northwards, although the far north will generally stay dry. And the wind's slowly easing here. Elsewhere, another breezy old day with dry and bright conditions across much of the east. Just a few scattered showers developing here. More showers, though, for the Midlands and parts of Wales later. And look at those temperatures. It could easily reach 17 in a few spots where we see some sunshine. But a colder feeling day with the rain across Scotland. That slowly pulls away on Friday. The northerly winds bringing a chill to the far north. Elsewhere, again, still pretty mild with a mixture of some bright spells, bit of blue sky, but also quite a few blustery showers. Again, temperatures pretty mild across the south, a colder feel further north. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner?
You've won £18,000.
I'm flipping heck. I don't know what to say.
Enter our massive spring giveaway with 3 big seasonal prizes to be won. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package,